Now, let's look at some of the key moments from Charlie Kirk's funeral. There were so many poignant moments, so many fantastic speeches, none more so than Erika Kirk, who brought the whole stadium to tears. It took extraordinary strength, extraordinary grace to do this.
Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do. That man, that young man, I forgive him.
She explained that she forgave Charlie's killer because that's what Jesus would have done and that's what Charlie would have done. Just an astonishing speech. And Erika had a message for young men. The message her husband not only preached, but he lived it every day.
To all the men watching around the world, accept Charlie's challenge and embrace true manhood. Be strong and courageous for your families. Love your wives and lead them. Love your children and protect them. Be the spiritual head of your home. But please be a leader worth following. Your wife is not your servant. Your wife is not your employee. Your wife is not your slave. She is your helper. You are not rivals. You are one flesh working together for the glory of God.
Erika also had a message for young women. And as you listen to this, remember that Charlie said Erika is far more conservative than he was. She's just the right person to propel Turning Point USA to even greater heights.
Women, I have a challenge for you too. Be virtuous. Our strength is found in God's design for our role. We are the guardians. We are the encouragers. We are the preservers. Guard your heart. Everything you do flows from it. And if you're a mother, please recognize that is the single most important ministry you have.
Now, Vice President J.D. Vance gave a powerful speech. He talked about his faith and he talked about Charlie's influence, not only on himself, but on the country.
You know, I can't help but think that they tried to silence my friend Charlie Kirk. They tried to silence our dear friend Charlie Kirk. And today, tonight, we speak with Charlie and for Charlie louder than ever. The evil murderer who took Charlie from us expected us to have a funeral today, and instead, my friends, we have had a revival in celebration of Charlie Kirk and of his Lord Jesus Christ. that I always felt a little uncomfortable talking about my faith in public as much as I loved the Lord and as much as it was an important part of my life. I have talked more about Jesus Christ in the past 2 weeks than I have my entire time in public life.
But J.D. Vance wasn't going to sugarcoat the crisis facing America, with the modern left becoming increasingly violent and unable to tolerate differing views in peace.
I know that this makes you angry just as it has made me angry. But it is easy in these moments to see only the worst of our fellow man. I found myself wishing that I could pick up the phone and talk to my friend and ask him for his advice and his counsel, to ask him how to respond to such hate and the souls from which that hate springs. But I can't call my friend because he was murdered for speaking the truth. I can only guess at what he might say and what he would encourage me to do. And here's what I think. I think he would encourage me to be honest that evil still walks among us, not to ignore it for the sake of a fake kumbaya moment, but to address it head on and honestly as the sickness that it is.
And that was a theme that senior Trump advisor and White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller also explored. Here he lays out the difference between conservatives and the anti-West forces of the left.
The light will defeat the dark. We will prevail over the forces of wickedness and evil. They cannot imagine what they have awakened. They cannot conceive of the army that they have arisen in all of us. Because we stand for what is good, what is virtuous, what is noble. And to those trying to incite violence against us, those trying to foment hatred against us, what do you have? You have nothing. You are nothing. You are wickedness, you are jealousy, you are envy, you are hatred. You are nothing. You can build nothing. You can produce nothing. You can create nothing. We are the ones who build. We are the ones who create. We are the ones who lift up humanity. You thought you could kill Charlie Kirk? You have made him immortal. You have immortalized Charlie Kirk. And now millions will carry on his legacy. And we will devote the rest of our lives to finishing the causes for which Charlie gave his last measure of devotion. You cannot defeat us. You cannot slow us. You cannot stop us. You cannot deter us. We will carry Charlie and Erika in our heart every single day and fight that much harder because of what you did to us. You have no idea the dragon you have awakened. You have no idea how determined we will be to save this civilization, to save the West, to save this republic.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio got a standing ovation. Well, most of the speakers did. And he talked about the fact that people around the world are grieving for Charlie and that senior members of Trump's administration were all in the one place to pay tribute to this man.
Charlie Kirk was impactful. Impactful because of all the things I've said, but look around this place. There's 100-something thousand people here. The President of the United States is here. His entire cabinet is here. Television outlets and media outlets from all over the world are covering this. I just came from overseas, and every country I stopped, they gave us their condolences for his passing. Impactful in just 31 years of life.
Benny Johnson spoke about how his great friend saved his life. Before Charlie, Benny said he was a loser, an alcoholic without a wife, without kids, without purpose. That's all changed. And he also spoke about what happened in Butler.
The Apostle Paul describes how God establishes the rulers of the nations. In the audience right now, there are rulers of our land. Represented right here is the State Department, the Department of War, the Department of Justice, the Chief Executive, God has instituted them. God has given them power over our nation and our land. God saved our president, President Trump, from an assassin's bullet for this moment.
War Secretary Pete Hegseth gave a powerful speech. He sees Charlie's murder as a turning point.
My pastor texted me the day after that horrific event and said, Pete, the devil overplayed his hand. Charlie started with liberty, but ended up lighting our country on fire for Christ. He started Turning Point USA, but this moment is the turning point for the USA.
Now Tucker Carlson got a standing ovation before he even began his speech. He was clearly touched by what he was seeing, what he was hearing and feeling at State Farm Stadium. He saw it as biblical.
This is the most unbelievable thing I think I've ever seen. And I don't... Whatever happens next in America, I hope it's in this direction, because God is here and you can feel it. And Charlie would have loved this. But the main thing about Charlie and his message, he was bringing the gospel to the country. He was doing the thing that the people in charge hate most, which is calling for them to repent.
Charlie Kirk's producer Andrew Colvert said that Charlie was martyred and that he lived his life as a prophet.
I see it now clearly that Charlie Kirk was a prophet. Not the fortune-telling kind that could predict the future, but the biblical kind. He confronted evil and proclaimed the truth and called us to repent and be saved. Amen. And he wasn't mean about it. He was kind and he was loving.
The president gave a quintessential Trump speech, and it contained some lighter moments as he remarked on how he and Charlie differed.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me.
He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erika. But now Erika can talk to me and the whole group, and maybe they can convince me that that's not right, but I can't stand my opponent.
I don't think Donald Trump is changing, and who can blame him? His opponents tried to put him in jail and bankrupt him. Now, the president also revealed that Charlie asked him to make Chicago great again, and he's determined to do just that.
Raised in the suburbs of Chicago, Charlie was filled with a patriotic spirit from his youth, and he was an all-American in everything he did. And one of the last things he said to me is, "Please, sir, save Chicago." We're going to do that. We're going to save Chicago from horrible crime.
And one of the most moving moments was right at the end of the memorial when President Trump asked Erika to come back on stage. It's clear that the president and senior members of his administration have Erika's back. Now, there were plenty of other moving moments, plenty more laughs too. Let's have a look at Charlie's great mate, Donald Trump Jr., doing a very good impersonation of his father.
I've even gotten the call from that guy a couple times. You know, Don, you're getting a little aggressive on social media, Don. Relax.
and a young colleague of Charlie Kirk, Mikey McCoy, like a number of other speakers, called Charlie a martyr.
My friend was martyred for using his voice to engage in peaceful dialogue. Charlie's assassin thought that he could steal and silence his voice by putting a bullet in his neck. In the words of Soren Kierkegaard, the tyrant dies and his rule is over. The martyr dies and his rule has just begun.
It's time for Lefties Losing It. Now, while normal people from across America were gathering in Phoenix to pay tribute to Charlie Kirk, the line started the night before, and by 4 a.m. the crowds were huge. As you can see, they're full of young people, not just those geriatric misfits you see at those No Kings protests, but amongst the patriots who love America, just like Charlie did, there was a small group of misfits who thought it's a good idea to protest a funeral. Just gross, gross. And talking about gross, this happened in NYC. A group of contemptible far-left imbeciles did their best to interrupt a sombre vigil for Charlie. How did they do that? Well, one screechy cretin sang Bella Ciao, a message written on one of the unfired bullets. And then some sad soy boys sang about wanting the young Republicans to die. This is the modern left, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't want your salvations.
Why?
I want you to die. We're not going to give you a second chance, even when you beg for it on your knees, begging and pleading.
Just when you think the left has hit rock bottom, they start digging. And that brings me to the Democrats, who have incited so much of this hate, so much of this hysteria and violence. Listen here to Democrat Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who shared a disgusting statement on X, reshared this claim that Charlie Kirk was Dr. Frankenstein and his monster shot him through the neck. Well, here is Omar on CNN with Caitlin Collins doubling down.
I think it was the video where it called him Dr. Frankenstein and said his monster shot him through the neck. I mean, obviously this is a person, and looking at this is someone who was a husband and a father, and in the days after his shocking death, that happened as a result of his views, or it happened as a result as he was sharing his views publicly with people, that people found it jarring to hear such criticism of that in the immediate aftermath of
what I find jarring is that there's so many people willing to excuse the most reprehensible things that he said, that they agree with that they're willing to have monuments for him, that they want to create a day to honor him, and that they want to produce resolutions in the House of Congress honoring his life and legacy. It is one thing to care about his life, because obviously so many people loved him, including his children and wife. But I am not going to sit here and be judged for not wanting to honor any legacy this man has left behind. That should be in the dustbin of history, and we should hopefully move on and forget the hate that he spewed every single day.
The only one spreading hate is that hideously ungrateful woman. You know, it's only in the West where people who hate the country are accepted as migrants and allowed to run for public office. As for Charlie being left in the dustbin of history, is that what she said? Well, his message, his name is bigger now than ever. Sorry, Elon. Now, let's check in on actress turned mad activist Cynthia Nixon. She's now boycotting lefty corporate Disney because they're not left enough, apparently. This is over the low-rating Jimmy Kimmel being pulled off air after deliberately lying about Charlie Kirk's alleged killer. Suddenly, the left cares about the First Amendment and free speech. If only they knew what it meant.
I just canceled my Disney Plus and Hulu subscriptions, and they asked me why. I hit other, and I wrote, because I believe in the First Amendment, reinstate Jimmy Kimmel. now. My whole family is really going to miss Abbott Elementary. We are really going to miss Only Murders in the Building. But you know what? We would miss the First Amendment a whole lot more. Don't go to the theme parks. Don't go on the cruises. Cancel your subscriptions. Now.
Now let's hear from a race-baiting pastor spewing nothing but lies and vitriol. Now either he is lying and he knows he is lying, or he's ignorant. There are no other explanations for what you're about to hear.
Calling this nation to honor and venerate a man who was an unapologetic racist and spent all of his life sowing seeds of division and hate into this land. There's nowhere in Bible where we are taught to honor evil. And how you die does not redeem how you lived. You do not become a hero in your death when you are a weapon of the enemy in your life.
And Charlie Kirk worked another miracle today. He brought feuding former bros Elon Musk and President Donald Trump back together. And Elon had this to say about Charlie.
Charlie was someone who believed in dialogue, in open debate. He was a man of ideas. He spoke eloquently. He basically never even raised his voice. He was a man of peace. And now he's been murdered in cold blood.
Did you know him personally?
Yes, of course. We met many times.
How was he like?
I supported his organization. I supported Turning Point from quite early.
Why was he killed?
He was killed because his words made a difference. Because he was showing people the light. And he was killed by the dark.
Charlie was murdered by the dark for showing people the light. That's quite profound and beautiful from Elon Musk. Let's bring in documentary filmmaker and commentator Ami Horowitz. Ami, what did you think of today's service? The emotion in the room was palpable. It was quite powerful.
It was incredible. And it's unbelievable to hear, considering how dark what happened was, how evil it was. For them not to fall into that trap and to just focus on love and togetherness and camaraderie was incredible. The moment where Erika Kirk forgave him was something beyond anything I could possibly muster up. And it's just a direct contrast to the left. It's a direct contrast to when I've gone to similar rallies on the left, and all you hear is vitriol and hate and a call for violence. It really shows the difference between the two.
Oh, it does. And you've experienced that, as you said, yourself. You've been met with violence just for taking an American flag to a protest. You didn't even say anything, do anything. Just the presence of the American flag was enough to trigger these people into violent acts against you.
Of an American flag?
Yeah.
I didn't fly a MAGA sign, right? Or some pro-Israel sign. It was an American flag in America, having Americans react to it. It's so fascinating how the left has devolved into violence. And look, they say there's this narrative that it's white supremacists who are involved. And yes, look, there's some truth to that, obviously. But with all large lies, they take a kernel of truth and they distort it, right?
Yeah.
Look what they're doing here. Sure, there is violence on the very hard far right, but it's such a small percentage of the demographic makeup of the right as opposed to the violence of the left. It's a much larger percentage of the Democratic population.
And we see case after case after case, and you've seen some polling recently that bears that out, where people who identify as left-leaning or very left are quite openly saying, yes, acts of violence are justifiable in some cases.
What's so fascinating about that poll is that it's a linear poll, right? The spectrum is very clear. The more left you are, the more prone to violence, which we kind of knew.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating was the more right you are, the less you are calling for violence, and that people in the center actually call for more violence or accept more violence in our political culture than people on the center-right does. Yeah, it's a fascinating poll.
And completely contrary to so much of the media commentary on this issue, because they love running that line that the biggest threat is right-wing extremism, when that's just not the case. Now, we saw footage today of Charlie Kirk's final moments, his final day, and I was really touched by that. I wasn't expecting to see it. We saw a little bit of this about a week ago, but we saw a lot more today, and he was just so full of life, so full of joy. He was on a university campus, massive crowd, beautiful day, and the horror that followed is just unthinkable. Let's have a look at some of that footage.
All right, 3, 2, 1, smile. Awesome, guys. Thank you.
Charlie Kirk! Charlie Kirk! Charlie Kirk! Charlie Kirk! Charlie Kirk! USA! 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 USA!
That was Utah Valley University, and you see Charlie there with a big smile on his face. He was always smiling. He was the joyful warrior. They killed the joyful warrior.
I mean, I want to rewire my brain for that to be the image I remember of Charlie Kirk, as opposed to having seen those horrific images where I was just woken up. I was in a different part of the world, and I wake up to texts from friends and family telling me that he was killed. And I turn on, Instagram, and I couldn't believe it. But the images of him being murdered were all over the place and just seared into my memory. And those are the images I want to remember him, the happy warrior, the person who was open and friendly, which is so crazy because they're trying to make him the exact opposite. They keep using the word hateful and hate. And you saw not just those images, but when he spoke, and if you listen, I have been listening to hours of what he was saying in those debates, and you don't hear any hate from him. It's openness. It's wanting to convince somebody else of his position. That's not hateful. It's the opposite of hateful.
And the fact that, again, commentators, some people in the media who should know better, Democrats, congresswomen, are using the sort of language that the alleged killer used. It's almost exactly the same. Even this horrific murder, this assassination, hasn't been enough to wake them up that this isn't the way to go. This is not the way to engage in political debate.
Yeah, but unfortunately, a lot on the left think it is.
Yeah.
Right? Because, remember, words are violence. So if words are violence, then you can use violence to combat words because they're the same thing on a moral level. I guess nobody then had their parents tell them, use your words.
Yeah.
Because they use their violence.
That's it. Now, I mentioned earlier that Elon Musk posted something terrible about Charlie Kirk, casting him as some sort of a Frankenstein who created a monster who killed him. I mean, that in itself is just so... it's not just ugly, it's full of lies. It was someone from the left that killed him. It wasn't some Turning Point USA devotee. And she's doubling down, Army. There is absolutely no self-reflection, no apology, no I'm going to turn down the temperature and do better. She's doubled down on it on CNN without shame.
I'm sorry, are you surprised? Of course not.
I'm still surprised because she can see this outpouring of grief, she can see the reaction. I'm sure it's taken someone like her who exists in an echo chamber by surprise, but to not take even a moment to reconsider her position.
Shame and remorse are not words or actions in the vocabulary of the left. And actually, on that CNN interview, I want to point something out that people haven't pointed out, is that as horrific as that was, and it was obviously, but she had said to the CNN host, she said, well, do you agree that that I have less brain processing power as a black woman? But the problem was that the host said, of course I don't agree. But the host didn't say, because we know that was debunked. The host knows that. The host didn't say, oh, I'm sorry. But he never said that. Yeah. She kind of implied that he did say that, and she didn't agree with him, which is the entire problem, casting him as this evil person when it wasn't his words.
Do you think Caitlin Collins is ignorant? She didn't know that? Or she chose not to make that correction because We know where her politics lies, and she doesn't want to be sticking up for a Charlie Kirk and being critical of an Elon Musk.
Well, then she's either the worst journalist in the world and didn't hear all the debunking that went on, or she did, and she chose to ignore it because she likes to cast people like us, people like me, I should say, and Charlie Kirk as evil.
Now, Vice President J.D. Vance gave a superb speech, and he had this poignant line.
It is better to die a young man in this world than to sell your soul for an easy life with no purpose, no risk, no love, and no truth.
I mean, what do you make of the role faith played in today's memorial? Just about, in fact, every speaker talked about faith, and it was so important to Charlie. His Christian faith was the most important thing to him, and his values, the way he lived his life, what he preached was centered around that.
I mean, faith is an important part of what makes us more human, right? What brings the humanity out of us. And when we look at Charlie Kirk and say he was this happy warrior, well, that goes hand in hand with his faith, because that's what his faith taught him.
Yeah.
And I think that, and again, when we go back to contrasting the rallies of the left, these are rallies devoid of faith. And when you don't have faith, when you don't have a belief in God, that's when you devolve into violence, I think. And I think that that's why we see what happened today in Arizona, in Glendale, Arizona, was such a loving, warm embrace of life, as opposed to a demonization. I think it's because of the faith.
And yet, at a funeral, we had the sort of security you might expect if you're entering the Oval Office. It took hours for everyone to go through. No one was really complaining. You had the president there, the vice president, just about every senior member of the administration, so you can understand. But the fact that you can't even have any sense of security at a funeral speaks to just what a crisis point there is in this country when it comes to political debate. There is nothing that's off limits.
Those days are over. Those days of being able to walk on a college campus, give a speech in an open area are over. Look, I get death threats all the time. Everyone I know who is in this world gets death threats repeatedly. Ben Shapiro can't give a speech on a campus without having a phalanx of security guards and police officers, not to mention his own personal security.
Yeah.
And I think what we learned is that, look, if somebody wants to kill you, right, they're going to be able to do it. If they're willing to trade, they may not have to die, but they're willing to trade their freedom, they can do it. It's a scary time for people who want to speak out, but we have to. We have no choice.
I think it's something Douglas Murray said: when something like this happens, you spread the risk. I think he was actually quoting Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who's intimately aware of the horrors that can come from extremists attacking you for your opinion. Now, the New York Post has a great editorial on the funeral. They called it a message to the mainstream media. The editorial asks, was Jimmy Kimmel watching Sunday? Was ABC? Do they understand the bubble they've created? Not only do they not speak to or for these people, they deny they exist. It is unsustainable. I mean, what's your reaction to that? Because you can tell there are many in the media who are shocked by this outpouring of grief, the fact that people have travelled from around the country to be here. They were lining up overnight by 4 a.m. in the dark. There seemed like tens of thousands waiting to enter the stadium. The crowd was huge. And so many in the media are completely blindsided by that.
Yeah, because, look, you know, it's so interesting. The outrage we saw to Jimmy Kimmel's firing as compared to the outrage of an assassination of a cultural and political figure, it's incredible to me. This is what the left has done. It doesn't matter. They're more outraged about a hack comedian who had no audience, right, than truly a significant turning point in our culture. An assassination of a political figure did not draw as much ire from the left as a firing of Jimmy Kimmel.
And they didn't mention it at the Emmys, did they? Not even a passing reference to this significant event.
Do you think that was possible?
I mean,
really?
You would think, when I started seeing major sporting leagues having a moment's silence, doing some of them fairly lengthy tributes. I thought maybe the culture has shifted and that would be reflected in Hollywood, but no, Hollywood is running
not only
its
that,
own show.
Hollywood demonized people in Hollywood who said anything nice about Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
Not that they supported Charlie Kirk, God forbid, but people who said like a killing of Charlie Kirk is a terrible thing, like Kristen Chenoweth.
Yeah.
And she got roasted by Hollywood for showing empathy.
It's a sick, sick place. Now, the left, the Democrats, are suddenly passionate about free speech, or what they think is free speech. Jimmy Kimmel's terrible program, low-rating program, has been pulled off air. And, Army, it's incredible. They're trying to make Jimmy Kimmel the victim of this entire catastrophe. Somehow, he's the victim. He's the one who's being targeted and persecuted, as opposed to the man who's had his life taken from him. And he was persecuted with the Biden DOJ. They were investigating Turning Point, him personally. He spoke about his fear of ending up in federal prison if a Democrat was elected president again.
Look, I'm not a fan of the government getting involved in something like Jimmy Kimmel. I don't think it's a good idea. I think it sets a bad precedent, and I promise you it will boomerang when there's a Democratic president.
But it already has. This is the point that Republicans make. Those sort of arguments ring a little hollow because the Democrats go out of their way to silence
They always have.
their political opponents. So I don't know. I think perhaps if they get a taste of their own medicine, if they're held to their own standards,
I don't like it from
maybe
either
they'll
side.
back away from this sort of cancel culture. No.
No, I don't like it from either side. I don't think it's healthy.
Well,
Having
I mean,
said
the
that,
man he's lost 70% of his
no,
audience.
he should have been. Don't
He
get me
should have
wrong.
been sacked
He should have been
years
fired.
ago.
I have no problem with being firing. I just don't like any government intervention.
Well, of course, we don't want government intervention, but again, from what we've seen reported, he not only said something that was verifiably a lie, and he knew was a lie, he still said it. He had no intention of backing away. Like Elon Musk, he wanted to go back on the next program and double down on those attacks. And in that scenario, I mean, what could ABC do? They've just had a massive payout. Unless they just are happy writing checks endlessly, they had to take some action.
We're in the media business. We know they're not willing to write. They're not happy to write endless checks. Look, they were looking for an excuse. There's no question about it. I mean, you saw what happened to Colbert.
Yeah.
It was the same. Late night just isn't driving revenue. Their costs are out of control. Jimmy Kimmel makes a huge amount of money relative to the amount of audience they bring in.
Oh.
It's not worth it. They were looking for a reason, and he gave it to them.
Maths ain't mathsing, as the kids say. It makes no sense. Is that what they say?
They do say that.
Something like that. How can he earn that salary with that pitiful audience? I mean, what sort of a business are ABC running? If I was a shareholder, I'd be asking a few questions. I can tell you about that. We've just finished Charlie Kirk's memorial service. I've never experienced anything like that. I doubt I ever will again. I'm here with CJ Pearson. CJ, what did you take away from today?
I think my takeaway today is that we are not just witnessing a funeral here, but we're witnessing a revival. And I got to say that this is such a beautiful thing to see. But when J.D. Vance said that it is time for us to put on the armor of God and to get back to work, that resonated with me. And I think it resonated with the tens of thousands of people who packed into this arena. Actually, not just arena, a stadium. This was Taylor Swift numbers that came out here for Charlie Kirk, but came out here for his message of loving your God, loving your country, loving your family. That assassin tried to end this movement with a bullet, but instead what he did is he let it to grow in a way in which we've never seen before, and I don't think we ever could have predicted.
Erika Kirk was just so powerful, so full of grace. I don't think there was a dry eye in the house here when she finished her speech. Where do you think that strength comes from to stand there less than 2 weeks after her husband was torn from her and to forgive his killer?
It comes from God. There's no other explanation for it. To sit there, to stand on that stage and to say, I forgive you, after she has gone through unspeakable pain, unspeakable hurt, unspeakable tragedy. And for her to have the power and the courage and the bravery to say those words, it's almost inhuman, right? It's supernatural in a sense. But but it's not supernatural. We know where it comes from. It comes directly from God. And I've got to say that she is a woman made for such a time as this. If there's anyone that can carry on the torch and the legacy of Charlie Kirk, it is her. And, as a 23-year-old young man who's single, oftentimes I would talk to Charlie and say, CJ, when are you getting married? And I wasn't in a rush. But when I think about the type of woman that I one day hope to marry, it's one that can stand there with such resolute strength in the face of adversity and keep going and keep fighting, and that's exactly what Erika Kirk is doing.
And Erika Kirk had a message for young men in America, young men across the world.
To all the men watching around the world, accept Charlie's challenge and embrace true manhood. Be strong and courageous for your families. Love your wives and lead them. Love your children and protect them. Be the spiritual head of your home. But please be a leader worth following.
Tell me about that message. It's one that Charlie not only preached, but he lived it. He wanted his friends to live it. What did that mean to him?
It was a call to action. It was a call to action for us to reject the narrative that comes from the left, that we should be demonized for wanting to be protectors, wanting to be providers, wanting to be the men and the role and play the role of men that God calls us to play. And so I take it again as a call to action. I think it's time for us to all get to work. It's time for us to dig deeper, to fight harder, and to leave it all out on the field for Charlie and for his legacy.
And when she spoke about embracing real manhood, what does that mean to you?
I think exactly what she said. She took the words out of my mouth. Not treating women as our servants, but as our partners, being one flesh, and to realize that we are all in this together. We are all fighting for a more perfect union, a better America that serves us better and truer. And again, it was a call to action to be who God calls us to be. And if more of us reflected that promise, reflected that call to action, the world would be a better place.
Now, the service from start to finish was so spiritual. Charlie's faith was the central point throughout. It was about family, it was about freedom, country, but at the foremost, it was about faith.
You're right, and I think that's what, of course, I think resonated with so many people in this room. And why you're seeing here in America, churches being full, parking lots outside of them being full. Because he didn't only just lead people to truth, he led them to God. Because he realizes that all of truth derives from the most ultimate truth, the word of our Holy Father. And so I've got to say, it's incredible to see so many young people flocking towards tradition. We've already seen it. We've seen study after study saying that young men are running back to church. And I got to say, that is a good fortune for America, good fortune for the West, and I'm excited to see where this movement goes.
Now, J.D. Vance mentioned that he loves his faith, his relationship with God, but he's never been really comfortable talking about it. But in the past 2 weeks, he said he's publicly spoken about God more than he has possibly throughout his entire adult life. Do you think that's going to become a trend with prominent people not being ashamed to say what their faith is and what it means to them?
That story resonated with me because I can relate to it a lot. And I think that it is going to be an increasing trend. And the reason being is that when things like this happen, the only thing that can really get you through it is God. Because it doesn't make any sense why such an evil person would put a bullet inside of Charlie Kirk simply for having different opinions than he did, for standing for God, for country, and for faith, and all of those things. Why should such an evil happen? But it's about what came after that. This would not have been possible. People would not be flocking towards the truth, flocking towards church, if he had not made the sacrifice of his life that he did. And it's a hard thing to conceptualize, but it's one of which that if you believe in God and you have faith, it slowly starts to make sense. And so I think it will become more of a trend.
Now, Charlie was called a joyful warrior. He always had a smile on his face. He never lost his temper. He was always kind. And today we saw some footage we haven't seen before of his final minutes, final hour, when he went into that university, and he was so happy, so full of life, and so full of positivity. It really was so heartbreaking to see that, and then to know what followed.
It was absolutely devastating. And every single day, He laced up his boots and he went out there on the battlefield of ideas and fought for everything that he believed in. And that passion, that energy should be what fuels us in the days ahead, in the months ahead, in the years ahead. We've got to fight like Charlie, and we've got to fight for Charlie, because his legacy should not die with him. It should be alive. It is alive. We see it in this room here today, 100,000 people. That did more numbers than Elvis Presley, folks are saying, right? And I got to say, again, like you said, there was no dry eye in this room after hearing all those incredible speakers, and there was a very, very obvious reason for that.
New York Post is reporting there were 200,000 people in and around the stadium, so the crowd numbers are completely incredible. But we do have the left. We have mainstream Democrats saying that Charlie was a hateful figure. He shouldn't be celebrated. Ilhan Omar, I think, said he will be a footnote in history. I mean, it's such a callous remark to make at any time, but particularly now. What's your response to her and others like her?
I think it's disgusting, but I think when Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time, and I think the left has shown us exactly who they are. You know, when their heroes die, what do conservatives do? We pray for them. When our heroes die, what do? They dance on their graves, and it's a sick, sick thing that I think that we can only do is pray for healing for them. What I'll say is what I love to have seen after this is that we didn't go and burn down buildings. We didn't go and riot. What did we do? We lit up candles and we prayed together. And I think that is what differentiates us from the left and the right. Simple as that.
It's all good to talk about unity and coming together, but how realistic is that when you've got a certain percentage of the country that thinks violence is a reasonable response to disagreement?
And not just a certain percentage. According to a YouGov poll, nearly 50% of those who identify as liberal believe political violence is at times justified. You know, how can we unify with these people? I think that what we need to do is we need to, again, remind ourselves of what American actually being, what that actually means. And it means having appreciation for free speech, the discourse, and the exchange of ideas. And we've got to get back to that for the sake of our country, for the survival of our country, we have to get back to it. But as you said, I'm deeply troubled by those stats. I'm deeply troubled by those polling numbers. And hopefully we can figure out a way to right this ship before it's too late.
And the revival started today.
It started today and it's not ending.
CJ Pearson, thank you for your time.